Sometimes the easiest way to gain power is to make a deal with the devil.
My name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin.
And we are the Dungeon Dudes. And today, we're going to explore what happens when everyone in the party says yes to temptation and decides to play a Warlock.
There's a lot to discuss today, so let's get rolling.
About 5 years ago, we started our first actual play campaign here on YouTube, and when we were rolling up our characters for that campaign, the thing that we knew we had to have for the player characters were custom miniatures with Hero Forge, the sponsor for this week's episode.
Hero Forge offers fully customizable tabletop miniatures with dozens of options for you to pick and choose from to customize your mini to whatever your fantasy design goals are. Their easy-to-use design tools lets you build your perfect miniature online using a fully 3D in-depth character creator right in your web browser.
We've loved using Hero Forge miniatures in our games for a long time, and we're really excited to celebrate 5 years of our campaign by ordering a new set of color customized miniatures from Hero Forge as high-level versions of the original characters that we got several years ago. But if you're like us and you don't have as much time for painting miniatures anymore, you're gonna love their color printed miniatures. These are miniatures that come fully colored. You can color them in the app, and they come printed this way. They're absolutely amazing.
Also, Hero Forge has added new face customization tools, allowing you to shape the eyebrows, nose, jawline, and everything else to completely customize the facial expressions of your characters.
So craft your own custom miniature for your next adventurer or villain at HeroForge.com. You can save up to 20% on physical miniatures and up to 50% on their digital miniatures or STLs that you print yourself with their Black Friday sale that runs until November 27th. Head on over with the links below or at HeroForge.com.
Thank you so much to Hero Forge for sponsoring this week's video, and now let's get on to the episode.
So a recap of the rules of how these episodes work. Kelly and I are going to create a party of 4 player characters. Everybody has to play the same class.
Each character must choose a different subclass, though, and no multiclassing is allowed.
The party must be able to perform in all 3 pillars of play from level 1 to 20.
Then, at the end of the video, we'll rank the party on our leaderboard, giving them a rank from D to S tier.
So kicking things off, everybody's going to play a Warlock. D8 hit die, charisma-based spellcasters. Everyone's got to choose their subclass, their patron at level 1. So this actually means that we have to have a party with everyone having a different patron, which is a little interesting because unlike the Cleric episode where we pondered what would happen if they all followed the same god, it's not like this is going to be a party all associated with the same entity, in which case you would have a cult, which would actually be super cool, and I would consider making an exception to just have the what if the entire party plays a cult episode. But for the purpose of this thought experiment, we're still going to have everyone pick a different patron.
And if everybody does pick a different patron, I think that you can build a campaign around that in a lot of interesting ways. I think that the first thing that comes to my mind is that the player characters are all pawns in some sort of cosmic gamble, and the patrons are actually all siblings. I'm very much inspired by the Sandman comics, if you've seen the TV show. In Sandman, they're all kind of related to one another. They interfere with humans' lives way too often. But they'll come down and they'll be like, hey, that human over there, what do you think would happen if we gave him eternal life? And they have a discussion about betting on that. What would he do? And then they do it. That's one of my favorite episodes in the show. But I can imagine all the patrons have this like sibling rivalry. They're not necessarily nice to each other, but they're not necessarily trying to kill each other. And they're just using their pawns to sort of imbue gifts upon them and be like, let's see what they do. Maybe there's an evil that is powerful enough that all of these patrons are like, fine, our little pawns on the surface can band together. You pick your best warrior, I'll pick mine. We'll send them out because we need to defeat this thing, because then we can keep toying with mortal souls.
It's kind of interesting imagining some sort of planar location, maybe like Sigil, where an angel, a demon, a Fey overlord, a eldritch entity, a genie all get together and are all hatching some sort of multiplanar super conspiracy of their own, or maybe are all working to get against one. I do actually think that for me, again, it's that thing of everyone choosing a different subclass, but like the idea of several different Fey lords and ladies all having their own warlocks and having like 4 Fey packed warlocks, but their patrons are all a different Fey, or 4 Great Old One warlocks where their patrons are all different Great Old Ones, or 4 Fiend packed warlocks where it's different fiends, but they all have to work together for some reason. But I mean, of course, the idea of everyone having the same patron is also equally interesting. But we're gonna mix it up for this one.
With those ideas on the table, I guess the next question is, if we are picking 4 different patrons, which patrons do we want to pick?
We've talked about previously the all paladin party being kind of like the Power Rangers.
Yeah.
But one of the things that's interesting about the Power Rangers is that they all had like an animal associated with them. And so with the all warlock party, you actually might be able to vibe on that idea as that maybe instead of a cult, or maybe instead of a group of paladins, maybe this is some sort of like witch hunter, mage hunter order where the members of the order all do make an eldritch pact, but there's always one representative of each entity that has worked with the order. So there is kind of like a mantle that is passed, but that is what forms the group, right? So in this organization, there is always the demon and there is always the fae. And there's this organization that is formed that has sought out these planar powers for the express purpose of building a group of defenders, or even some kind of like weird knightly order, or even like an order of spellcasters in some way. Like they are like a cabal or a coven that seek out different power, and the rule is that everyone always seeks out a different source of power so that the overall organization isn't corrupted. Because that's the whole thing, is that if the organization was always getting its power from the same entity, that entity would have too much control and have too much power over the mortals. So they draw on multiple, and that's what makes that's what allows the mortals, who are the warlocks, to operate without the fear that the organization as a whole is going to be compromised by the interest of a demon or a Fey Lord, because there's always someone else who's getting their power from somewhere else that can check that power.
I love the trope of like secret organizations that like are working in the shadows to protect the innocent,
and that are willing to do dark things.
Like Hellboy kind of has this very like secret like if you imagine Hellboy, but they're all warlocks. Actually, another one that I argue is a group of warlocks is the Sailor Scouts from Sailor Moon. I have always...
Yeah, they're getting their power from planets.
Yeah, they draw their power from planets, they swear to a planet, and it imbues them with power and magical energies. Magical girls are warlocks, and you can't convince me otherwise, and I love it.
Interesting.
So if you want to play a group of... This is your magical girl
But
campaign.
that actually is a very interesting thing about like anime in general, because there often are entities or patrons that are giving individual power to a group of heroes who are then wielding that power, but that those powers are coming from different sources. So I actually think there's a lot to draw on there in terms of the inspiration.
I'm excited to run a Magical Girls campaign of all warlocks now. That's what I want to do. But, okay, so...
Doesn't Sailor Moon even have, like, a rod?
Yeah, she has a Rod of the Pact Keeper.
Yeah.
In the name of the moon.
Sailor Moon's a war... It is like Eldritch Blast, too.
Yep.
Sailor
It's
Moon's
all there.
a warlock.
Sailor Moon's a warlock. Oh, that's exciting. So what subclasses are we going to pick? So this is the important question. We have to pick 4 different patrons. You and I briefly discussed this before we shot the episode. What would we pick? We both landed on the same 4. And I just think it's a really strong and balanced party.
Yep.
So kicking things off with the most obvious choice that has to be here, the Hexblade.
The Hexblade's going to be our frontliner. it's a powerhouse of a class. Even though Hexblades often love multi-classing into sorcerers or into paladins or sometimes bards in particular, a single-classed Hexblade is actually really strong and stays strong throughout the game. They've got a lot of power behind them, and with the single-classed Hexblade, I think that you're still going to pick up Eldritch Blast, but you're probably going to go for a more defensive-oriented build. So instead of grabbing the polearm and the greatsword, you might actually go for sword and board with this character. Still go for Pact of the Blade, and you are going to be the frontliner. And I think that that's where actually the single class really helps this party, because you get Armor of Hexes at level 10, which is a great defensive feature for a frontliner as well.
Yeah, I think that the amount of variety that you're going to get in your invocations and your ability to play off of each other's features is actually going to be really powerful here. And the Hexblade is going to be our staple front liner. I think the next choice is, for me, the Genie Pact Warlock. And I think the Genie offers so many unique features that are going to really benefit this party. Oddly enough, I think the Genie Pact Warlock is our infiltrator of the group.
Okay.
They can put the rest of the party in their bottle, and if they put themselves as like the stealth-based character, or maybe they're the ones who takes Mask of Many Faces, the actor feat, they put all of the rest of the party in a bottle, clip it to their belt, walk right past the guards disguised as another guard, just being like, hey guards, what's up? How's it going? I'm just reporting for duty. See you later. Goes into the castle, then lets the rest of the party out. Having the bottled respite offers a safe place for resting, and also a great tool for travel and navigation and infiltration. So I actually think the Genie's the one that we want to be the multi-faced character who can like smooth talk their way with disguises and all of that into where the party needs to get to.
They're also going to be a pretty strong blaster, because I think I'm going to go for the Ifrit and get Fireball here, because this is one of the two places where we can pick up Fireball.
Yeah.
But you can go any way you want with this. I do agree this is a very adaptable character, and ultimately they're going to bring us our wishes.
I do think that you can be both the blaster and the infiltrator.
Oh,
so
yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Now, shockingly, we can have a healer in this party by having a Celestial Warlock. So not only are they going to bring some healing in here, but they are also going to have those really important things like greater and lesser restoration, not just raw healing, but they're going to be able to help us against conditions as well. The Celestial Warlock also is still going to be a decent blaster. So I think that they're a very natural fit. They bring a really needed utility. This party's not going to be super tanky, so you're going to want some healing in there. And yeah, I think it's a natural pick.
I do think the Celestial's important here because we want somebody with a little bit of healing capabilities. So between that, we have our frontliner, our infiltrator / blaster, and our healer / blaster. I think all of them are / blaster.
All of them are blasters.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll get into it with the combat, but I think everyone's taking Eldritch Blast.
This is where we kind of split those. The fourth pick. And I think there's two ways to go with this.
Okay.
There's a lot of great warlocks out there, but for me, it's between the Fiend and the Great Old One. And here's what I'm saying. The Fiend is if you want the dedicated damage dealer.
Yeah.
They are there to just dish out big spells, hurl people through hell. They get temporary hit points, so they can kind of... You could take a Fiend and take Pact of the Blade and kind of be another skirmisher. Bolstering yourself with temporary hit points can be beneficial, and you just get a lot of blasty and fiery spells. On the other hand, though, the Great Old One Warlock gives you a lot of abilities for like mind control, manipulation, and that sort of stuff, which could add an extra caveat to this party that is extremely beneficial.
Yeah, I think either way, you're going to have a strong party. And I think at that point, we've already got the Hexblade and the Celestial covering like the frontliner and the healer roles. And across everyone in the party, you're going to be like... That downside of Warlocks not having a lot of spell slots and not having a lot of spells to choose from is kind of counteracted by the fact that everybody can choose the spells that matter most. You can have the right spell from the right party member, and everyone can kind of specialize a little bit more deeply in that respect. And because everybody wants to take lots of short rests, you're gonna take lots of short rests in the Genie's bottle.
Yeah.
Right? So that weakness that Warlocks sometimes have in longer campaigns where you've got long rest party members that don't care about resting, everyone wants to take an hour off. And so you're always going to have this max performance spell slot situation between them. So getting into combat and how this party performs in combat, exploration, social interaction, this is a really cool set of strategies because I think that this party can build around Eldritch Blast and having all the knockabouts with Forceful Blast, with Repelling Blast, Lance of Lethargy, as well as Grasp of Hadar. The push, the pull, the slow, it's all there. And I think people can specialize, but it's actually awesome for everyone to have all those options.
And if you do have all those options, and because you have limited spell slots, as long as one person drops like Sickening Radiance, one person drops another AoE spell over top of
Hunger
that.
of Hadar.
Hunger of Hadar. You have Sickening Radiance and Hunger of Hadar.
And Wall of Fire.
And Wall of Fire around it, and then you're blasting enemies back into it constantly.
Yeah. It's messy.
Now, the amount of Eldritch Blasts going off on this battlefield is unreasonable. In a good way. I just mean that, like, if I picture the scene in my mind animated, it's like a Star Wars blaster fight with just beams going everywhere.
So can I add two things to this that make this, I kind of feel that knock this completely off the chain.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, your Genie-packed Warlock can fly on their own starting at level 10. Mm-hmm. But they can cast Fly on the whole party as well. So their flight is not based on concentration. So you've got your anchor that is lifting everyone into the sky. Then everybody in the party takes Devil's Sight.
Oh, yeah. Everybody in this party takes Devil's Sight, and you float in a cloud of, like, one person casts darkness. You all stand around that person floating, and you're just a ball of shadow.
A ball of darkness with lasers coming out of it. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm calling it the Death Star. You're just a little mini Death Star.
Like how ominous is that? Is that this rolling cloud of darkness with lasers shooting out of it, fireballs raining down, sickening radiance falling down, portals into a dimension of Hadar opening up.
The legends. So people will assume that one of the great old ones has come to Earth. There are rumors floating around the coast of an orb of darkness that floats along the countryside, destroying everything in its path with beams of energy. That's so fun.
Yeah.
So I think that this party, just the sheer amount of like the trope of dropping an AoE concentration spell and then blasting your targets in and out of it ×4 is great. Now, every once in a while, this floating orb is going to like poop out a Hexblade Warlock that then runs into battle. But that's also cool. And then they fly back into the orb after they're done. I don't know.
So to talk really specifically about the strategy, the thing that's interesting about this is that when you have so many characters that are all capable of pushing and pulling and slowing your foes down, you hit this critical mass with battlefield control, especially if someone in the party takes like the telekinetic feat as well, where the enemy is just going to be flying all over the place, knocked in and out of these damaging effects. And even in a circumstance where you really can't take massive advantage of that, everyone is shooting them with Eldritch Blasts. Like, it's really efficient damage. Like, even when this... And you could add to this, too. You could debuff a bunch of ability scores using all the hexes that this party can throw around, too. So, like, even in that case where you're up against an enemy where these strategies might not work very well, just the raw, concentrated firepower is really good.
I think that they're actually like combat might be their strongest. Like they're strong.
It's really strong, but as we go on to exploration, they're no slouches.
Well, this is the thing: is not the whole party doesn't need to be extremely good in exploration, but all warlocks have the option of taking Pact of the Chain, which gives them a very functional familiar.
Yes.
Familiars are well, they're one of the best things you can have for exploration. They can scout, they can fly up above the tree line and find the building far off in the distance that you're trying to find, or the benefits of having a familiar are endless, and exploration, they really come into play. They don't really have much in the ways, like they don't want to burn spells on exploration.
But here's the thing. Pact of the Tome can give them ritual casting.
And ritual casting can definitely help.
So with Pact of the Tome, we can have someone in the party that has guidance. So we've got skill buffing here. And not only that, we could have 2 Pact of the Tome warlocks that are going to, one for wizard, one for cleric. So now we have almost all the ritual spells in the game between the two of them. We have a chain pact warlock, and naturally we have a blade pact warlock. And what's cool is those tome pact warlocks, they can still get find familiar through the ritual version of it. At least one of them can. So you still have 2 exploring familiars. You still have, if one person in the party takes invisibility, now they can upcast that and the entire party can be invisible. There's still a warlock invocation to get access to polymorph, so someone's definitely going to take that. So you're going to have polymorph, you've got flight, you've got invisibility, you've got tons of teleportation, you've got guidance to buff your skills. Your skill proficiencies are going to be pretty bad.
Yeah, you're not the most skillful party, so you are relying on things like familiar and your ritual casting, but still, you're not a detriment in the exploration.
No, not at all. I think that there's so many options here that you actually have excellent exploration capabilities. I think you're doing just as well as the wizards and the bards in this respect, right? Like, and again, it's that whole element that this party is taking short rests reliably and consistently. So those spells that would normally be pretty costly to cast in an exploration scenario, the party's like, yeah, we'll just take an hour off, have a coffee, and then cast that spell out again.
They definitely travel with like a bunch of tea and biscuits so that they can like sit around and sip tea and We move on to the social interactions, and I mean, again, we are charisma-based spellcasters. We've seen this before. We've talked about it before. If you're a charisma-based party of all charisma-based characters, you're going to be just fine in charisma-based interactions. But on top of that, you do have options like having certain classes that are going to benefit even more from their charisma, or take things like Mask of Many Faces, the actor feat, like we've seen Joe do. So you have the option of taking invocations, skill proficiencies, or feats that can really push this to the next level.
Exactly. If you have someone that's playing a human or a half-elf and takes prodigy to give themselves that access to expertise, so you do have someone with expertise in persuasion or deception or intimidation if you want it, right? You could have someone in your party that is, again, bringing the ritual spells that are necessary to spy on enemies from a distance as well. Suggestions on the warlock spell list. You've got all your charm spells. You've got your dominate spells. It's all there. You've got all the tools to do it.
Yeah, I'd say that like they're not as good as a bard at the social intrigue, but they're pretty close.
I think the thing that knocks the bards up, if we're doing the comparison, is the bards have bardic inspiration and ready access to expertise to give them better skill use, so they don't have to rely on spells. Whereas the warlock-based party, I think, is very heavily reliant on bringing the spells. And so one of the kind of limitations that they might run into is, again, the coffee break.
Well, that's the thing, is they rely on spells, but they only have a couple spells each, so they need to be very choosy with what spells they use and when. But we've seen Joe take an inch and stretch it by a mile with Mask of Many Faces and the actor feat.
Yes.
So that alone has made him the best infiltrator in all of our parties. So it's really great for social infiltration and social manipulation. I won't say the bards are smooth talkers. The warlocks are social manipulators.
I agree, and I think the warlocks have all the tools. Again, it is that weird like Illuminati conspiracy sort of thing that is happening from this group. Like they're working in the shadows, they're using powers and accessing secrets that mortals were not meant to know in order to get the edge on things. I also imagine, what if someone in the party was playing a changeling?
I was also thinking that, yeah.
Yeah.
What if everybody was playing a changeling?
A whole party of changeling warlocks is a very scary prospect.
As we move on to the unique strategies with this party, we've already talked a lot about it, but I think that between the pushing and pulling, the laying down your AoE effect, I think that that's probably the most unique strategy. But I also want to say that when it comes to invocations, I think that the party should very strongly discuss which invocations are beneficial for everybody to have and which invocations are really good for them to kind of diverge and split on.
Yeah, so like everybody's going to want to take Agonizing Blast.
Yeah.
Right?
And everybody's going to want Devil's Sight.
Yep.
For the floating orb.
And I do think at the end of the day, it's probably amazing if maybe the Hexblade won't do it, but I think that everyone taking Repelling Blast makes a lot of sense.
And then maybe 2 take the Lance of Lethargy and 2 take the Arms of Hadar.
The Grasp of Hadar.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And obviously you're going to have to take a couple levels to get to this point. This is where you might even want to take the feat to get the extra Eldritch Invocation. You know, the other thing that would be very fun with this party as well would be to take the Sorcerer Metamagic Adept. So someone in the party has access to Subtle Spell, or maybe even Quicken Spell if you need it in a pinch.
Yeah, those could be handy. I think Metamagic could go a long way with this party. The strategies are pretty clear-cut. You're Eldritch Blasting, you're moving people around. The more battlefield control and movability of your enemies you have, the less of a chance they have at doing anything to you.
You know what's interesting about this is the Warlock, their class design is based on the template that was initiated for 4th edition D&D. So in 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons, almost everyone was kind of like a Warlock because you had your at-will powers, you had your encounter powers, and you had your daily powers, which now Warlocks, they have their spell slots, which are their encounter powers, they have their Mystic Arcanum, which are their daily powers, and they have their at-will. And so a lot of people like to levy this criticism of 4th edition that every class felt the same. And I do think that depending on your spell choices and how you build each of these individual characters, especially with like the Hexblade and the Celestial and the Genie, you're actually going to see a very different feeling character in each of these different characters. I mean, ultimately, maybe you're all going to feel like you're just all like a machine gun crew when you're all flying in the black blob and shooting Eldritch Blasts everywhere, but still awesome.
Let's talk about the weaknesses of this party. So the first thing that comes to mind is, although you can take a ton of short rests, there are situations in campaigns, and a lot of DMs, because of the way 5th edition is designed, put in effort to making it difficult to take constant short rests. Mm-hmm. There are things that come into play that say, hey, you can't take a short rest when you're in the middle of a dungeon. Or, hey, your entire city is covered in a magical haze, and therefore you can't take long rests, and short rests are dangerous, and all rests are dangerous. So if you're in a situation where all rests are dangerous, you can run out of fuel pretty quick with this party.
Yeah, and then when you're running on fumes, all you've got are your Eldritch Blasts,
which can get you somewhere. You're not.
They will. But when you run out of gas, and you run out of gas faster than the other casters that have more spell slots than you, at least on a per encounter basis. I also think that this party doesn't have very good defenses.
Yeah, warlocks aren't as squishy as a sorcerer or a wizard, but they're not as robust as many of the other classes out there.
Yeah.
Your Hexblade is going to get medium armor, and shields. Everybody else is wearing robes.
Yeah, light armor at best.
Light armor at best.
You can all get the invocation to have mage armor, but that's another invocation down for everybody, right? Or you can all slap on some light armor. Your saving throws are also nothing to write home about either. The Eldritch Mind invocation gives you all advantage on your concentration checks, so you don't have to take Warcaster as a feat. But again, that shows another weakness, is this entire party is very, very dependent on concentration spells for a lot of their strengths. So that bleak black orb of darkness, you can still huck a fireball into that, and then if a bunch of concentration checks get failed, the ball just falls and a bunch of warlocks fall out of it.
That's how the whole scheme is ruined, when a
Yeah.
bunch of warlocks just fall out of it. But yeah, I also, so they're not going to be the greatest with their skills, although they'll be okay.
Yeah.
They don't have expertise or
No
anything
one's
like
going to
that.
make an athletics check in this party.
No.
No.
They're not the best at defense. They're really just a whole bunch of glass cannons.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
they're glass cannons that fire a bunch right at the beginning, and then they need to take a nap.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the weaknesses of this party. Wrapping this all up, what do you think of the all warlock party? Do you like, my biggest selling point for me is the Magical Girls campaign. So I would love to like, I love the Magical Girls campaign. These are my two personalities, either Magical Girls campaign or Secret Society of Monster Hunters.
I like both of these ideas. I do think that the all warlock party is very, very playable.
Yeah.
In a lot of different circumstances. I don't think it excites me as much as maybe the all rogues do, despite the fact that it absolutely, in terms of strengths, this is way stronger than the all rogue party.
It is, but the all rogue party interested me more for what I could do, and the all bard party interested me more, and the all wizard party interested me more.
I feel like the all wizard party and the all warlock party can actually play very, very similarly in many respects. And I think that the all warlock party might actually be at its most interesting around late tier 2, early tier 3 play, where the warlock I think really is at its strongest, especially if you're going single class and not multi-classing. It feels really strong when it has like around level 11 or 12, because that's when it gets the third spell slot. That's when you get the third beam of Eldritch Blast. That's when you get a lot of the really powerful class features. And so around that level of play, I think that would be a really fun time to play the all warlock party in this way. I think that I could also have a lot more fun with it if you did allow multi-classing.
Multi-classing would get it a lot further. I do think, though, if you came to me and said, I want to run a secret organization, I mean, the thing is that also you could run a secret organization of monster hunters that like draw their powers and energies from ancient beings without everybody having to be a warlock. That's just a cool concept.
It is a cool concept.
I think that the all warlock party might be a B. They punch really hard,
Yeah.
but they run out of gas. They're a lot of fun. There's some really cool shenanigans, but you have to shore up your weaknesses.
Do you think that all warlocks is stronger than all paladins or weaker than all paladins?
Weaker.
Weaker?
I think all paladins are more well-rounded. They have the defense, they have the punch, they don't run out of spell slots as quickly.
The all warlocks have a lot more tricks up their sleeve though than the paladins do, and that's what I think. The warlocks really excite me a little bit more than the paladins and the clerics, because I think that the paladins and the clerics are more well-rounded in a combat scenario. Out of combat, I think the warlocks actually have more ways that they can engage with a scenario thanks to their spells.
I think the all warlock party is going to be manipulative, conniving, and even if they're the good guys, they're going to be a little seedy.
Yeah, they really are.
And that is interesting.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in playing an all warlock party or have tried an all warlock party, please tell us about it in the comments below.
And if you enjoy our work, please consider becoming a patron by following the links in the description below. You can get access to our patron-only Discord server where you can talk about your favorite character builds, our Drakkenheim campaigns, and much, much more.
And if you want to see a Warlock being a social manipulator a lot, then check out our live play in the Worlds of Drakkenheim, which airs Tuesday evenings on Twitch. You can find all the previous episodes right up over here.
And we've got plenty more videos in our What If Everyone Plays the Same Class series right up over here.
Please subscribe to our channel, like this video, and ring that bell so that you never miss an episode.
Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time
In the dungeon.